Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our fourth Kreativ Klub session. And I'm sure it's a bit odd because you're used to seeing this beautiful lady on this side of the room, but today she's on the other end. And that is because we felt that we need to come full circle and have her share her story with us today. My name is Taremeredzwa Takudzwa, the director of the Zimbabwe German Society, and I am going to be your host today. For this session, we have Vimbai Gwata, who is the General Manager of Akello. She has a background in professional services, IT consulting, and youth development. Vimbai is passionate about leveraging digital solutions to tackle social, economic, and environmental challenges. I'm not going to say any more because I'm going to allow her to share with us her journey, how she got to where she is, because I know that she's been through an interesting professional journey. She's had a lot of pivoting and changes that could shake somebody, but here she is. Bye.
Thank you, Tare.
You're welcome.
Okay, yes, it's very odd to be on this side, but let me give it my best shot and share my journey. I think like all journeys, how far back can we go to say where does the beginning actually happen, right? I think a lot of people can resonate with the idea of I was one of those kids who was good at everything.
Look at you.
I know. It's a hard burden to carry, but here we are. I think a lot of people can resonate with the idea of how career guidance wasn't so much of a thing. And back then, giving away my age, it wasn't all the kind of information resources that you have online where you can literally just jump onto any social media platform or, just scroll through LinkedIn and see what people do for a living to get an idea and be exposed to options. I think from my end, I was good at everything. I did weird combinations. The Zimbabwe education system, which is heavily influenced by the British education system, is a limiting one. Mm-hmm. You have to know what you're doing from, by the age of 14. Mm. You have to make a call. Unlike my younger sister who made a call at 5 and kept that call, I am not that person. I'm the person who was changing my mind every week. Okay. So what would happen is that I would just do as much as possible. So picking O-level subjects, you're just trying to keep it as broad and open as possible. Mm-hmm. To the point that you get to A-level, and in Zimbabwe people are big on combinations. My combination made no sense. It was like maths, English, and biology.
Gosh.
Things I enjoyed. But I knew I was not going to be doing medicine. Mm-hmm. I knew I wasn't going to do engineering. If it was left up to me, I would have ended up in the humanities, department in university, somewhere on Broadway by now. I feel like I can sing.
Are, right?
However, I have African parents. So what actually happened was my dad asked me a question. He said, "What do you want to do with your life?" And me jokingly said, "I want to be a lounge singer in Vegas." And he looked up and he said, "Sure." But the truth of the matter is, I actually had no answer.
Yeah. So
he said, "I'm going to help you make this decision. You're going to go to university and you're going to do accounting, a commerce degree." Never done accounting. I said, okay. I get to university. Within the first week, it's very clear. This is not it. But I don't know what else is it. Mm-hmm. But within the commerce department, there were so many other subjects I was enjoying, and one of them happened to be information systems. So by the end of first year, which by the way, got through by the skin of my teeth, I realized accounting just couldn't be it. So I started second year doing information systems, saying, you know what, programming is something that is creative, because it became very clear I was creative in some element. It's creative, I'm creating things, I can do it, I enjoy it. I don't know where it's going to lead to, but here we are. Let's see where it goes.
Mm.
Only to find out it was a discipline that didn't have a lot of women in it. By the time I got to my honors class, it didn't even have enough black people. In a class of like 70 honors students, there were 4 of us black.
Did you say 17 or 70?
70.
Oh, gosh.
There were 4 of us, and 3 of us were international students. So
Wow.
But still, the conundrum was, what do I do with this degree? You know what I mean? I actually don't want to be a programmer. I actually want to see the light during the day. Programmers don't sleep. Y'all know you don't sleep, and you keep funny hours. So I thought I was just going to find myself on the couch for 6 months while catching up on all my shows. And my father once again stepped in and said, go and speak to so-and-so, I found you a job. And I was like, what job? You don't even know what I do. And he was like, you're going to sell IT hardware. I was like, huh? And he was like, the best way to get a job is to be in a job you don't want to be. It'll motivate you to get the job you want.
That is true.
And sure words have never been said. One of the key things, I was in that job for about 6 or 7 months, which was a sales job, which was a really good job, by the way. My first exposure to selling, which is a skill you need everywhere else. And then what happened was, the next part was, my personal networks came into play. People would call me up and say, oh, there's this kind of role, there's people with your background. Until one friend particularly phoned me up and said, listen, at PricewaterhouseCoopers, there are people who do what you have done in Vasti, and they're being paid well, and they get to travel anywhere in the world. And I was just like, okay, so what do I have to do to prep? And he was like, you're good, just come. And I was like, this is not helpful. And it was for a role for IT auditing, which began my career in professional services. And it was a role that, once again, exposed me to how businesses work. You find the inner workings of businesses. It's a role that got me to move from Zim to South Africa in the same kind of instance. However, after I think it was about 10 years in professional services, I realized, like, corporate is killing me a little bit. I'm making rich people richer, but I really want to help people. So I took a leap of faith and started a role as a communications manager at a NGO. Now, what actually got me that job was my background in professional services, because if you've ever been into those businesses, which is Deloitte, Ernst & Young, KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, people will look at that on your CV and think, you must be good for something, because those places whip you up into shape professionally. They mold you. Like, you get exposed to directors, to big companies like you've never seen. And you walk out of there being just a stronger, well-rounded person. And those skills are transferable no matter where you go. And that's what I found when I moved to the NGO job. A lot of it was just creating order out of chaos. But also, I had been on the side writing and blogging and creating, I had a website then called Diaspora and Darlings that spoke about Africans in the diaspora and our stories. So during the day, I'm doing auditing. At night, I'm fulfilling my creative brief. And both things is what got me that role. So there's no wasted anything in terms of hobbies versus 9 to 5.
Okay.
So from the NGO, I got exposed to youth development and just how we can pay it forward and develop bright minds. However, the pay was terrible. And I said, there must be a way. There must be a way to get paid to do good work. Around about that time, my contract with them ended. I couldn't find a job in South Africa just because BEE requirements. If you are a foreign national, you're not going to meet them. I could have if I returned back to my corporate setting, but I said no. We're on this path. I'm not turning back. Let me go back to Zim. Which a lot of people behave like I was returning to Syria. They were like, how are you going to cope? Anyway, got back to Zim, was working in the family business for a while, which was actually a lot of fun, just helping my dad out with some of his businesses and him getting to see me as an adult, which was wonderful. And once again, my networks were like, hey, we know you're kind of in the job for, like, in the field for a job. We've put you in touch with somebody. This is about the second time where I don't go looking for a job. The job
comes to you.
Comes to me. I remember going into that interview, and it was for the communications. Well, they wanted somebody to help with social media for a tech hub called Muzinda Hub. I went into the interview thinking I'm auditioning for this thing, and in the interview, my boss was just like, looked at me and said, you, I think you've got what it takes to be a director in this business. And I was like, I thought we were here for social media things. And he was like, why don't you run the whole thing? And I was like, say what now? And he's like, yeah, I think you can do it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I've seen how programs run. I've been in that field. And that's how I ended up running a tech hub for about 5 years, which was great. Like, bringing in my past exposure to programming, helping get people digitally equipped, men and women, especially an emphasis on women, just because a lot of people think that programming is a men's field. It's not. And that role was very fulfilling. I think in that time, at least 5,000 people got through that program.
Wow.
Which had a lot of impact. Some people went on to create their own apps. Some people went on to actually become developers in big industries. Some, went overseas. So definitely a very fulfilling role.
Nice.
Once again, I was called into a meeting where I was told, hey, you've been looking after this one area. Why don't you take over the whole thing? I'm just like, how do we keep getting here? It's like, how do I go from looking after a team of like 4 people to now I currently look after a team of 32 people?
That's a lot.
That's a
big jump.
Very big jump.
Yeah.
So my role, so which brings me to kind of where I am now, which is General Manager at Akello, which is an online education platform, bringing in my background in professional services, my background in tech, my background in youth development, and also bringing in my interest areas and also my strengths in communications. I say all of that to say, sometimes it doesn't make sense what you're doing, especially to people around you. I remember sitting with some of my peers and they would look at me and be like, I can't make sense of your past work experience. What are you doing? And I was like, wherever I can apply myself, that's where I'm going. I'm not really feeling pigeoned into a specific role. I'm not trying to be the CEO of anything right now. I'm just trying to get a lot of experience within corporate and also just do good work and make positive impact on people. So that's where I find myself in this very weird trajectory, but very fulfilling work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting. So before we go very far, and I'm sure there are people out there that are like me, can you break down professional services?
Okay.
Like, because, I've seen it. I'm a very creative person, if you couldn't tell.
Yes.
I've seen it, like, on CVs and written down, but I've never actually grasped what professional services is, because it just doesn't sound... I was about to say it doesn't sound like an actual thing, but it is a thing. It sounds very broad. What is it?
It is broad. So depending where you are. So, okay. Think about a firm that has a lot of integrity and credibility and a lot of skill set. They bring in people to review what they're doing, to find holes.
Yeah.
You're doing like a gap analysis. And you're kind of saying, where do we strengthen? Where are weak spots? And what are your recommendations?
Is that why? Oh my gosh.
But you can do it in a law field. You can do it in engineering.
Yeah.
You can do it in any aspect. In my element, I was doing it from an IT control. So, you know how your IT guy makes you change your passwords all the time?
We tend to make our IT guy change the password.
Oh my gosh!
I know what you
see
mean.
red flags already. Red flags. But we're the ones kind of making sure you're not getting hacked. Your security systems, that the data that's in there, no one can change it without somebody not knowing, etc., etc. And IT governance things. So when people talk about management consulting, a lot of it is meant to just kind of impress you. But a lot of it, I'm going to give away state secrets here, it's people scrambling in the back to figure out what we're doing here.
Okay.
But we are, it's just companies where there's a lot of trust and confidence being put in the consultants being brought in to provide advice for whatever you've asked for advice for. That's what it is.
Interesting. I didn't know that had a name. So now I know.
There
now
you go.
you know.
There you go.
Are there any questions in the room? Oh gosh, there is a question already. Please, go ahead.
It's just to take on to what we were talking about in terms of professional services. All of them.
Sorry, you have to come across. Please come forward with your questions.
I have to sit on the mic today. When you speak, yes. That's nice. You were talking about professional services and how in your class at school there were 4 black people to 70. What were the numbers like when you came back home and you were working in IT, especially with black women?
Whew. The numbers are never good wherever we are. That's the truth of the matter. So when I was in South Africa, we were still in the minority. Like black women in tech, I think they're more. I think it's got better now, but it wasn't great. Like if we were sitting in a meeting, I could count us on one hand, like at any point in time. Sitting in meetings in South Africa, especially, I would sit there and be one of 2 black people in a room, and knowing the other person's also Zimbabwean, which was also worrisome because I'll be like, where are the South Africans? They should be here too. Zimbabwe is a completely different landscape. Definitely more black people. But women in tech, once again, not as many as I would like. Yeah.
Okay.
It's something that I know STEM is being pushed in schools quite aggressively. I know there are lots of programs supporting it, but the numbers just still need to be higher. Yeah.
Do you have an inkling to why that may be? Having been through the process? I mean, I know that it's like literally a lifetime apart, but...
I think it's exposure.
Okay.
Think about who influences careers from a young age.
Yeah.
I think when we were growing up, a lot of them were the usual kind of standard, and I think the usual standard is there because the usual standard is safe. Lawyers, doctors, engineers. Technology has been around, I guess, for about 2 decades. I'll say this millennium is when technology has had its time in the sun and is now like a staple. It's ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Whereas before, it wasn't, you know? So I think a lot of it is there enough people that young girls or girls coming up can model themselves on in tech?
Okay.
I just have to jump onto Instagram or TikTok and they're right there, you know? Talking about the kind of work they're doing, talking about even if you don't have a tech background, there's still opportunities for you in tech. And that's what I was saying at the beginning, which was the career guidance, the exposure to alternative kind of ways to go career-wise are just endless at the moment because there's real life examples right in front of you or a click away.
So, I mean, for, say, Zimbabwean landscape, how do we create a space where young girls have access to women like you in tech? because yes, it's a click away, but not everybody has access to that, and they don't know where to start looking. So how do we? Is there a space like that exists already, or is there something that needs to be created by the women that are currently in the space now?
Well, I can speak for like the Higher Life Foundation, which is the kind of corporate social responsibility arm for the Economic Group. They've got hubs across Zimbabwe in every province. They've got hubs there that have got the computer labs. We are creating the programs to assist and give that extra emphasis at Akello around primary and secondary education. But there are also additional opportunities from there to take digital learning certifications. I know that Plan International is doing the same across Zimbabwe. So there are definitely programs being run everywhere. There are challenges, obviously, with current things like the electricity situation that's kind of destabilizing the Southern Africa. You've got labs, but you don't have electricity.
Yeah.
Or you have labs, but you don't have connectivity.
Yeah.
So we're all trying to, in the different divisions, solve for those issues and create that exposure as well. And run career fairs.
Okay.
We do a lot of career fairs where we attend and kind of share what opportunities are there.
Okay. So, I mean, I think that's absolutely great. But where's the human connection? So having a conversation with you like now, like we're doing now, right? Gives me a better idea to then also ask kind of the stupid questions, the things that I think are, not things that I'm not supposed to ask.
If you
right?
just want me back next year to run sessions here at the Zimbabwe German Society, it's okay. I'm happy to do so. But I do understand what you mean.
Yeah.
When something becomes more tangible because there's a living, breathing person who is like me doing the thing that I'm interested in.
And also
Absolutely.
not necessarily just doing, but having the conversations around it.
Absolutely.
Kind of talking about what you did, where you went to study. Because I know we teach German, right? And we've had a lot of people come in and say, oh, I want to go to university. And then you ask them, what do you want to do? Oh, I'm not sure. I just know I need to learn German to go to university. Okay. So what do you like? Asking all the right questions to kind of get the mind to think and to kind of see, okay, if you want to get here, you need to do this and that, and then you'll get there, right? But food for thought.
Yes, ma'am. What you've said is absolutely valid, because I think about one of my good friends who's a recruiter, and she has way more access around what jobs pay best or in demand. And she'll tell me about like my 8-year-old nephew, and she'll be like, we need to get him into private equity funds. I'm like, he's 8. But what do we need to be doing now? And she's like, these people are getting $2 million annual bonuses. You know what I mean? And it's kind of that exposure to say, oh, there's a path like that. I mean, obviously we can get him on the path and he can be like, no, I want to be a painter. That's a different story. But those kind of options that are above and beyond the norm are kind of gate-kept, I guess is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So how do we make that information on a wider scale?
And accessible.
To say, are you aware that you have this option and that option?
Yeah.
I don't have the answer for that, but we'll work on it.
We're thinking about it. Any questions from the room?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Hi.
So you spoke about your Netflix. So like how you cultivated your
See, that's interesting. I was going to ask the same question. Great minds.
You guys have got hard questions. Okay. So networks is anyone within your sphere of anything. So it's people you go to church with. It's your friends and your family. It's anyone and everyone you've ever gone to school with, worked with, spoken to in a corner at a party. I think when people talk about networks, it sounds scarier than it actually is. It's this kind of saying, any kind of relationship where you've connected with people, not necessarily about like even work, but just related as human beings. Those are your networks. Now, I'm an extrovert, so these things are much easier to me because I like to get to know people. I like to talk to people. I still talk to people that I've known like since I was 7. I'm very good at keeping in communication. Even if it's like 3 times a year, hey, how are you doing? What's happening? With no agenda in mind. I think people must also understand networking is not a hustling culture to be like, what can Tade do for me? It's a relationship. You know what I mean? It's Tade knowing, I've known Tade for years. Tade knows I love the spotlight. So when Tade was like, hey, we have an idea for a show, would you be interested? I'm like, oh, that's networks. That's networks, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where someone naturally having interacted with you can see an opportunity with you or for you without you necessarily having to say anything. Sometimes you obviously have to mine your network. So for example, let's just say that you are looking for people to help you pick a university to go to, or you're looking for a job. It's as simple as dropping an email with everybody on BCC, please hide people's emails, saying, it's a pet peeve of mine, saying, hi guys, as you're aware, I used to be working here. I'm actually in the market for these kind of jobs. I've attached my CV. If you hear anything, let me know. And that just lets people, top of their mind, consider you. So wherever they are, if something comes up. I think networks as well, people think things just happen. Things don't just happen for the most part. You actually have to set the intention to let people know, hey, I'm looking for this opportunity, or can you put me in touch with somebody who can tell me how to get this skill set, etc., etc. Introverts, you can do it too. Case in point, she's right here. A whole director. But I think you have to find it in a style that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Sometimes we see how it happens on TV and it sounds a lot more aggressive. The way, somebody once said to me like, oh, Vim, can you sell things? And I was like, I'm not a seller. I can't sell anything. But anyone who knows me will tell you that the minute I find something that I like, I'm like, hey, have you heard of this thing? Go and try this thing. Or go to this place. Everyone is a natural something seller, but you have to give yourself credit that you can do it. So yeah, that's how you kind of mine your networks. Your networks is everybody.
Yeah. I have a question, if there aren't any more questions in the room.
A nice one, please.
That's relative. Now that you're here, looking back, what is it is there anything that you wish you had known then?
Everything.
That, would have made a difference to where you're at now? Is there anything that you wish you hadn't done then?
I think I wish I would have had a little more, maybe curiosity too. But as I'm thinking specifically back to kind of high school where you're trying to make these decisions, where I wish I had had a lot more curiosity and been more proactive around trying to figure out what the options are.
Okay.
I think I could definitely have done a lot more around that. Especially the conversations around, hey, what do you want to be doing? I think you could have them quite early. Not necessarily, hey, you need to apply for university, pick a course. And it's like, huh?
Yeah.
Which was pretty last minute. So I would say having more conversations with older siblings or cousins who've already gone through the process to say, hey, is there a way that I can do this to do it? Or is there a better way to get this kind of information?
Okay.
As opposed to what would I do differently? Well, you see, it's like messing around with the matrix. I wouldn't be here if it went differently.
Yeah.
So there are some things I think I would have done a little bit differently, but not so much that would change kind of the routing around the jobs and exposure, because I think they've all built on. Like, nothing has been lost. Nothing was a waste of time. I think that was one of my biggest fears, would be, am I doing something and it's a waste of time?
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend who has an honors in chemistry, who's now the global head marketer for a big brand. There's no waste of time.
Yeah.
All there is experiences and transferable skills that always apply to wherever you're going.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you were in South Africa at some point and then you moved back to Zimbabwe.
Mm-hmm.
How was it working outside of your own comfort zone, your own space, you know, what you're used to in terms of culture? And then how did the decision come to be to move back home?
What do you mean? How is it working in South Africa?
Yes.
Well, I had attended South African university, so it wasn't too much of a leap in terms of culture and the way that things work. I think what was different was you're quite far away from home. I know it's Johannesburg, but for me, the things were community that's not family.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to build community within friends and networks. So, for example, next of kin wasn't actually kin; it's a friend.
Mm-hmm.
So if something happens to you, that's what it is.
Yeah.
It had its pros and its cons. I was there during one big recession, which saw retrenchments happening, which made Zimbabweans in the workplace very easy to let go. So Zimbabweans who work anywhere outside of Zimbabwe will tell you it's not all sunshine and roses. I'm very appreciative about the work experience
Mm-hmm.
and the relationships and the networks that I got, because I'm still in touch with a lot of those people.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just hard going in terms of there were a lot of opportunities that wouldn't apply to me.
Okay.
There were a lot of things that didn't benefit me.
Mm-hmm.
And vulnerability in the workplace, because if they have to let people go, it's going to be you first.
Yeah.
But yeah, still just proud about the work experiences I had. The move to come back home was because I couldn't find a job, because the Black Empowerment Equity, I think, I forgot what BE stands for,
Mm-hmm.
is not there for me. You know what I mean? It's there to benefit South Africans, which it should.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very big decision, because at the time I took it quite harshly. Felt like an absolute failure.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it felt like you're supposed to leave Zim and never come back. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So now I'm coming back, which means I failed. So coming back home and being like, okay, let's reframe it.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, it's an experience that happened. Who's to say I might return there? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not done forever. But how do I make the best of where I am now?
Okay.
In Zim. And once again, I told you when I moved back to Zimbabwe, a lot of people were just like, that's not a place you move back to.
Yeah.
Zim isn't easy all the time, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
But what's been very interesting to me is I've enjoyed the professional work. There is so much good work being done in Zim that is not advertised or spoken about, but on grassroots levels and every level of every sector, people are making leaps and bounds. Also the community. I think I've had a better sense of community here.
Okay.
than I had in South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Having family is a big thing for me. Having that support, it's here. I've managed to create friendships and relationships that I think will last a lifetime here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Zim has worked out. It's not to say Zim is perfect. Nowhere's perfect. But I think about it as seasons. My Zimbabwe season has been fruitful. And I am a big believer of being fruitful in every season.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Any last words, advice, anything?
I think be curious. There's just a lot more information around what you can do. Also, don't be scared to pivot. Don't be scared to change and take leaps of faith. At any age, by the way, because some people think like you're supposed to have it worked out by 30, which is a lie. I think 30 is when it actually becomes interesting. A lot of us put pressure on ourselves to fulfill some sort of life plan that we wrote when we were 16. Yeah, don't do that. I think you must know that you are constantly evolving. You can change your mind at any point. And I think you should know that within you, there's a lot more that you can do with some courage and a lot of research. Absolutely. Those are my parting words.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for joining us and allowing to be put into the hot seat and getting a feel of what the rest of us went through.
Thank you.
And that's it, folks. Thank you for tuning into Kreativ Klub.